The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
Old Mattress Mac is at it again. $2 million bet on the New England Patriots, who are 4.5-point underdogs in this game. And if you spend $4,000 at his mattress store and the Patriots win, the purchase is free. You know what it costs for a mattress? Probably about $600 or $700. You got to buy a lot of bedding to get up to $4,000. But good for Mattress Mac for doing that. Plus, I have a snow story from yesterday, which I guess will sound like a get off my lawn type of story. It's get out of my parking spot. And boy, the twists and turns that took yesterday afternoon really stunned me. I don't know if it would necessarily stun you, but being my age and still feeling the soreness of digging out my parking spot and my wife's parking spot in front of our townhouse. No, I do not have a garage, but I have two spots right in front of the house, so it's easy to take in groceries and packages and things like that. I dug it out. It took a lot of effort, and I spent a good part of Monday and a good part of Tuesday digging both spots out. So yesterday I get home, it's like 11:45, and my wife is out. I knew she was going to be back later in the afternoon, probably like 2 or 3 o'clock, so in a couple hours. But I see a car in my wife's parking spot. On top of that, this car is running. Now, I found that a little bit encouraging at the beginning, thinking, okay, it's cold. Somebody parked near another house that they're visiting. They found one of the few open parking spots because of the mounds of snow, and he or she will pop right out and leave. Well, I eat my lunch, go back upstairs, look out the window, car's still there. So now I'm thinking, this is really bizarre. And I even go outside to make sure it's still running. Oh, yeah, car's still running. So I call the Germantown police, non-emergency number, not tying up 911 or anything like that. And they tell me, oh, no, this has to be handled by the homeowners association. We can't move that car. I said, you don't even have to tow it. You can just get in it. And I was thinking about doing it myself, moving the car, but in this day and age, you never know how people are going to react, and maybe he or she comes out of the house and things get nuts. So, okay, I'll leave this up to people who are supposed to handle this. I finally get a hold of somebody at the Homeowners Association, so delay in doing that. But after about 2 hours, a woman shows up in an SUV, and she rolls down her window, and I stick my head out the door, and I said, okay, can you get this car moved? She says, I'm going to have it towed. I said, okay, great, figuring it's the Homeowners Association that will have it towed. No. She's going to call the police. I said, well, don't call the police because they're not going to do anything. She says, they'll do something for me. And we wait another few minutes, and just then a woman comes out, probably mid-20s. She's got, of course, a cell phone in her hand, and she gets in the car, and as she's getting in the car, I said, what the hell are you doing? This car's been idling here for 2 hours. And she gives me a look like my daughter has been giving me for the last 20 years. So, old man, what's the big deal? And that was her attitude. She goes, okay, just, who leaves a car idling for 2 hours? And it's a Jaguar. It's not a new Jaguar, but it's an expensive car. Idles for over 2 hours. She's still got the phone in her hand. She's talking on the phone. She's not even using Bluetooth, and finally pulls out of the spot, but saw absolutely nothing wrong with the idea of taking over one of my parking spots. Now, maybe she didn't necessarily know that those belong to me, and as an owner of the house, those are my two exclusive spots, but to leave a car idling for 2 hours? And it wasn't like she said, oh God, I forgot the car was left running. Maybe she does this on a regular basis. What am I missing here? It's crazy. And, it's not like I could say to my wife, I could call her, hey, when you get home, your parking spot's filled. But there's plenty. Normally when the parking lot's clear, there's a ton of spaces. There's guest spaces across the street or across the parking lot, so you could park there. But in this case, this was one of just a handful of available spots, and the others belonged to people who had shoveled out their own spot. and expected to be able to return to it when they came home. So, I don't know, maybe this is a new world here. My kids are older than that. I guess she's Gen Z. If you're in your 20s, my kids are in their 30s, so at the tail end of millennial. But if this is the way it works now, oh, my God. I know, old man, get used to it. But that was a stunner yesterday. All right, to the sports, and Jesse Minter, introduced as the new coach of the Ravens. He's been there before as an assistant coach, replaces John Harbaugh. And anyone who comes in to coach the Ravens has one job and one job only. Get Lamar Jackson figured out. He's been one of the best players in the league. He's won the MVP a couple of times, yet he has not been able to get his team to the Super Bowl, and that's what cost John Harbaugh his job. I think short of getting to the Super Bowl this year, he wasn't coming back, and he didn't even get him to the playoffs. So that's why the change was made, and Minter has familiarity with the organization and with Lamar Jackson, though he's a defensive guy. They did overlap before he left, and is now coming from the Chargers to coach, to be the head coach. And when he joined Rich Eisen yesterday, he was asked about the game plan for getting Lamar right.
First of all, to connect with Lamar, we've had some good conversations. Relationships take time, and I think our relationship is really one of the most important things in this whole process. And so we are getting to know each other really on a daily basis right now, having a lot of good conversations, good talking points. Look forward to seeing him in person soon. And so that's the catalyst of it. And then it's creating an environment where we bring out the best in Lamar. I think he's one of the best leaders when he's in an environment that he's thriving in, that he's enjoying. And so it's our job as a staff to create that environment where he can be the best version of himself. We've seen what that looks like. When he's the best version of himself, there's nobody better in the National Football League. And so really look forward to creating that environment for Lamar, working hand in hand to make sure we get that done.
And then the offensive coordinator of your choice would run what type of offense to get Lamar to where he can get even further than what he's already been? And how would it look different from what we have seen?
Yeah, I think it takes a very creative, innovative person to build an offense for Lamar Jackson and for the players we have in place, the Derrick Henrys, the Zay Flowers, all the guys here, Mark Andrews. And so it's going to be a very collaborative offense built around the guys that we have, the players that we have, the strengths of each player, and then having the best quarterback in the National Football League. And we want plays where he can thrive on schedule, and we can make the offense easy for him at times with having a really dominant running game and having plays off of the running game that create explosives and create completions for him. And then you know that you have Lamar, and then when it becomes crunch time and something's covered up, that he has this magical power to make plays in those situations. And so it's gonna be a very creative, innovative offense built around who we have, and most importantly, built around Lamar Jackson.
What coach is not going to say we have a innovative and creative offense? Now, they did say they want to run the ball, which would be a good idea, which Todd Monken, I don't think, did enough of, especially with Derrick Henry. Henry had some fumbling problems early in the season, but he seemed to get right towards the end. Now, I don't know what he's got left in the tank, but even a compromised Derrick Henry is better than most backs in the league. So, yes, you do want to have an established running game. You got a very good tight end and a great quarterback, and let's see what happens. But he's also taking on something, and I think there's another coach that's going to do this as well, taking on calling the defensive signals. Oh, yeah, Robert Saleh is going to do that in Tennessee as he's the head coach there. We had Dan Quinn do it in the second half of the season this year. Things got a little bit better, but he's not going to do it, and he has hired a defensive coordinator, which we will get to. We also had yesterday the locker clean-out with the Buffalo Bills, and showing up on crutches and a boot was Josh Allen, who revealed that he was playing the last few games of the season with a broken foot. That tells you something. He said during the week it was a little painful, but as for the game, the adrenaline, and he didn't mention it, but I'm sure a shot didn't help as well. They are doing something that was done here with disastrous results 33 years ago. A lot of circumstances went into this. I would have loved to have seen Richie Pettibone get a real shot to be a head coach. But Joe Gibbs wound up retiring for the first time in March of 1993. Too late to do a coach search, and certainly I thought it was well-deserved that Richie Pettibone, who had been a big part of their success coordinating the defense, moved up to head coach. He won 4 games. He got fired after a year. I don't think that's going to be the case with Joe Brady, but Brady is doing something in Buffalo, which you don't see very often these days, with Sean McDermott getting the boot. He's moving up from offensive coordinator to head coach. And yesterday he was on the Pat McAfee show talking about the process, which landed him the head coaching job with, by the way, Josh Allen in the room as the interviews are taking place.
Did I expect it to happen with Coach McDermott? No, but once the opportunity, once it happened, and this was an opportunity that came along, like, this is exactly where I wanted to be. And obviously, got afforded the opportunity. And look, like you said, they went straight from a press conference to my interview, and I didn't know what the hell to expect. I'm going to be honest with you. It was one of those opportunities that's like, hey, are they just going to sit there and be like, hey, we checked the box, this guy's the in-house man, and let's keep it moving. And look, I walked into that, and I came away so damn impressed by the ownership group, Brandon Bean, as you guys know Bean, and Josh sitting in there. And like, I'm with these guys on a day-to-day basis, but they treat it as if I was the offensive coordinator for the New Orleans Saints, right? And man, I appreciated that so much. And I mean, it was intense. But look, I was sweating it out for a week, but there's nowhere. I didn't want to just be a head coach. I wanted to be the head coach of the Buffalo Bills, man. And man, I'm loving life right now.
I love to hear that. Congratulations. A lot of expectation, obviously, because the man that you talked about that was sitting in there in the room, Josh Allen, and how great he is. You've obviously seen it. You've witnessed it. What are the questions in there? Are they talking about, okay, you have an MVP quarterback. We have the best runner in the backfield in James Cook. Our offensive line was voted the #1 offensive line in football by A.Q. Shipley in the trenches. What is the conversation? What is the interview like? And what did they not know about you maybe that they learn in that interview process that make you think that you could be the head guy?
Well, I think, look, the biggest thing is there's a complete difference of just calling plays and then running an organization and understanding how to lead a group of men. I'm not the offensive coordinator anymore, and making sure that I understand how to communicate with the defensive guys and have a vision for what I want that to look like with our special teams and what it's going to look like standing in front of a room. And look, they put me through the ringer, and look, we got to grow our offense. So it's not one of those things where it's just like, hey, offense check, let's keep it moving. And, just making sure that they allowed me the opportunity to kind of talk about my vision, and everything that we do. And look, Josh didn't toss me in the alley-oops. I hit him after. I was like, you couldn't give me a little, I've been with you, you could have hit me a little something. And nah, he approached it the right way. And I have so much respect for how he handled it. And, obviously I removed myself from the situation with him, but, and he's not the first quarterback that sat in one of these meetings that I've been in, but I know he takes a little heat from it. But man, he was outstanding. And look, I get to call plays with Josh, and there's no one I love more.
That is an interesting nugget there from Joe Brady at the end. I guess he did get a chance to interview for other jobs around the league and said that the quarterback did sit in on the interviews. I thought it was kind of unusual in Buffalo. The only problem I see with this is there's probably a different type of relationship that's been built up between Josh Allen and Joe Brady that has to change when Brady becomes the head coach. He has to be more of a hard ass, and I don't think a chummy relationship with a quarterback that you're going to have to chew out from time to time is going to work out that well. We'll see. We'll see how that – but I was fortunate in my career to cover 3 Hall of Fame coaches, Tom Landry, Bill Parcells, and Joe Gibbs. And I can tell you, having seen Parcells chew out Phil Simms, they were not chummy. Landry was cold. He was cold and calculating, ran the team kind of like an engineer, which is what he was, and a former war hero where his plane almost went down, and he realized, hey, you got to stay calm under every situation. So he was kind of the Iceman in that, and there wasn't any real warmth there. And Gibbs, he's the one that basically had to tell Joe Theismann, stop doing TV all the time and start worrying about being my quarterback. And, those are the kind of things that a head coach has to do. So I'll be interested to see what develops there. But just because they're all chummy now and have had this great working relationship, that's going to change when he becomes a head coach, and we'll see if that changes for a situation that may not be the best for the Buffalo Bills. And then you have what's going on here. Dan Quinn is coming back, though Quinn is coming back on the hot seat, and he's doing it with really untested guys. Now, maybe they'll both work out, but they moved up David Blau from quarterbacks coach to offensive coordinator. He's not that far removed from playing. He's a newbie at this. And even though Durante Jones is 47 years old, he's never been a coordinator except for 1 year at LSU. He's never really come close to that in the pros. And like the coach that he's replacing, Joe Witt Jr., who got fired, he's been a defensive backs coach. And it's hard to tell now, other than you could say, well, it's a risky proposition. You got two untried guys, like last time around in 2024 when they got Cliff Kingsbury. He's like, whoa, okay, that's guy a head coach, and he even left the Raiders. He had a deal with the Raiders. He backed out of that to come here. Well, we don't have that now, and they didn't land Mike McDaniel, who has had history with Dan Quinn and was, I think, highly sought after. He's going to be able to work with a really good quarterback as he goes to the Chargers, and then as Tom Lavero points out about Durante Jones, Joe Witt had never been a defensive coordinator in the NFL, but Dan Quinn was more familiar with Witt's potential to do the job since they had worked together in Dallas. He really doesn't know that much other than what he saw in the interviews and what he heard from other people about Durante Jones. That's not to say he won't be great, but these are not tried spots. I would have thought they would have tried harder to land a more experienced defensive coordinator given how the Joe Witt situation didn't work out. Was it all Witt's fault? I don't know. But clearly bringing in a guy who had not done it before resulted in a very disastrous situation, which the head coach basically had to shove him aside and take over. I don't think Quinn wants to do that again. As for what's going to happen now on the defensive staff with this new defensive coordinator, John Keim, who's covered the team forever, works for ESPN and does a podcast. This is his take on what's likely to happen with the defensive staff.
They have been a bad defense, and the injuries played a factor, but so too did a lot of other things. Talent plays into that, and how was the coaching? Clearly, Dan Quinn is putting some of the onus on the coaching based on the moves he has made and based on the moves that they are going to make. And there are some of the coaches may leave of their own volition, but I do think like if Washington really wanted to keep them, they wouldn't be interviewing for other jobs. So we'll see what happens. I don't know yet what that means for Ryan Kerrigan as well. So somebody who's obviously may spend his whole career with Washington, almost his whole career with Washington, and as a player and as a coach, we'll see what that looks like for him. I'm not sure. So just stay tuned for all that, but just know there will be changes. They obviously want to bring in someone now. Who that could be as the established guy in the front seven, I don't know yet. There are some people out there that are available. Carl Dunbar was a defensive line coach in Pittsburgh. He's free. You wonder about what's going to happen with Cleveland's defensive staff if Jim Schwartz does not stick around there, because there are some guys there that could be available that might be interesting. Jacques Cesar, I think it's Cesar, is a defensive line coach there. I don't know. I don't have no clue if any of these guys are remotely what they're looking for. What I do know is they want somebody, and I also know that you can't just look with Jones and say like, okay, and I know Minnesota's defensive line coach is interviewing with other teams. I think he was interviewing with Dallas. And if you heard Kevin Seifert on my podcast yesterday, then you would know that like he's got connections to Christian Parker, who is a new DC in Dallas. So I don't know if he would be somebody of interest here, but could it make sense? Sure. I think the other thing to keep in mind with Jones, and I was listening to a podcast with him on the DB network where he talked about like one time he got a job. I think it was at Wisconsin. I think there was a connection to somebody I think both he and someone who hired him were both at like Nicholls State or something like that. But he said, like, that's not the reason why he was hired. People assume that, but that's not the reason. The reason he was hired there is because of philosophical agreement they had, or just the way they viewed the defense was the key, not the connection. It's how you view something is the key. Just because you work with someone doesn't mean you either A, like what they did, or B, agree with what they did. So, or the way they see things. However, that does help. So you cannot dismiss those kind of connections because it does matter, but it's not the end all be all for sure. So I think that's something I picked up from Joe's. But again, the good thing for him is he does have connections to a few different people who may or may not be available.
Yeah, so we'll see. That's John Keim on Durante Jones and the staff that he will put together as the defensive coordinator. The only other thing I would add to what John said and thoughts on an inexperienced guy coming in, it may be what Dan Quinn wants, because that's his side of the ball. That's where he spent his coaching career as a defensive guy, defensive coordinator for a couple of teams, head coach specializing in defense. Does he want somebody who has a stronger will? Like when you bring in Cliff Kingsbury, you say, kind of like what Joe Gibbs did with Richie Pettibone. That's your side of the ball. You worry about that. I'll get involved in some of the play calling and some of the decisions, but you're going to run that side of the ball. Would he feel comfortable with someone who's had experience as a defensive coordinator running things, and he being able to jump in and kibitz and maybe add his 2 cents? That may have factored into Durante Jones becoming the defensive coordinator and not hiring somebody with experience. That's not to say he won't do a good job, but that might have been part of the decision-making as well. Coming up, when Charles Barkley speaks, people listen, and a must-listen coming up, including how much he's betting on the Super Bowl. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
If Charles Barkley wasn't making, I believe, $21 million a year and wanted to work more, he doesn't have to work much, or many days, I should say, for that $21 million, and clearly he's worth it for the people that pay him. As Pete Rose said many years ago, no one is overpaid if someone's willing to pay you, and they are willing to pay Barkley that kind of money, and he's, I'm sure, very much worth it for him, and he has made it clear in his 60s he's not working 5 days a week. But if he wanted to do that, and with the right co-host, a kind of an Ernie Johnson type who can keep the train on the tracks, he would be great in this format. He would be tremendous in sports radio. Doesn't want to do it, and those of us who have done it for a long time, though we love it, it's a grind. I mean, you've got to be pretty much on it every day, and that's understandably not what Charles Barkley wants to do. But when he does go on as a guest, he's tremendous. And he was on with Dan Patrick yesterday. Shows up on his show maybe once a month or so. It doesn't matter if it's anything of significance that they want to talk about. Just hearing Charles Barkley talk is great. So they started with this, controversy, and Barkley did weigh in on this on the Inside the NBA show about the thing that's dominated the news cycle for the last 72 hours, and that's that Bill Belichick did not make it to the Hall of Fame on the first ballot, and Barkley was among those who said, that's absurd, that's ridiculous, etc. But then they got into something that Deion Sanders has brought up. And Deion says, look, we got all these guys in the Hall of Fame, and they're great players, but there's also a different level of the Hall of Fame, which he would certainly put himself on and deserves to be on. When you talk about the greatest of the great, I don't think there was anybody better who ever played cornerback than Deion Sanders. So that's what he'd like to have is a separate designation for the first ballot guys who you don't even have to discuss in the room. You just put them in. And Barkley was asked, well, do you think that would make sense to do that in the NBA?
I have no problem with that. Listen, I'm a Hall of Famer, Dan. I'm not at the table with Michael, Larry Bird, Magic Johnson, LeBron, Kobe. Those guys are at a different table than me. That's just the way it is. I don't take it personally. I know that I had a hell of a career, but I just don't.
But you're a first ballot Hall of Famer, weren't you?
I am, but I'm not at the same table as those guys. Those guys won multiple championships. That's what separates.
Well, how many tables are you away from them?
Well, I don't look at it like that. We're just not at the same table.
Yeah, I think you underrate yourself.
No, dude, I'm very good where I was, but I'm saying guys who win multiple, like guys who win one championship, they're at a different table than guys who won multiple. That's no slight. Like, there's a bunch of coaches who won a championship. They're not at the at the club. They're not the same table with Belichick, Chuck Noll, Lombardi, guys like that. And that's not a slight. They're first ballot Hall of Famers, but we're not all created equal.
Okay, but is Scottie Pippen at the big table that you're not at?
No.
But he won multiple championships.
Yeah, but he wasn't driving the bus like Michael and Bird and Magic and those guys were.
So
And
James Worthy is not at the big table.
he's not.
Okay. So you have to be the alpha dog. You have to be the number one guy.
100%.
Okay.
But it's just my opinion.
Yeah.
It's just my opinion. Like guys who are on multiple championship team who were role players, I don't hold that against them, but they're not Hall of Famers, number one to start with. But guys who were the man year in, year out, who carried the water, those guys at a different table.
That's Charles Barkley, and here's where I would disagree with him on that. And he's in the Hall of Fame, and I'm not. But the Hall of Fame in any sport, it celebrates individual accomplishment, though occasionally you will have entire teams that will join the Hall of Fame. But in the case of individual players, you're recognized for what you did on the playing field or on the court or the ice or whatever it happens to be. But in a sense, you're joining a new team. And on a team, if it's properly run, if it's properly coached, they don't designate. Hey, everybody knows, how much more important Tom Brady was to the Patriots dynasty than the long snapper. I get that. But also when you have a really well-run team, people don't concentrate on those things. So I think it would be contradictory to have a separate spot in the Hall of Fame for the best of the best. No, they're saying to you, you're joining a fraternity which is very exclusive. You perform so well in your sport, you're joining it, but it's a fraternity where there's really not a pecking order. There's no cliques, and that would sort of create a clique. And that's why I would say I would disagree with Dion and Barkley that you shouldn't have that. Now we get to the betting, and Barkley is very, very famous for this, makes big bets. And so they got to, here we are in another Super Bowl week, and he always says he takes a big group of friends to Vegas to bet on the Super Bowl and have a good time. And so when he was with Dan yesterday, they talked about what else? His Super Bowl bet.
How much money are you going to bet on the Super Bowl?
Probably about $250.
Okay.
About $250.
What's the most you've bet?
$500,000.
You lost that one, didn't you?
Oh, I didn't win. They, my boy Belichick against the Rams, he won me big money.
Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah, they won me big money then. I'm all in on Belichick, man. He's my guy. I hate this. The way this stuff is turning out, to be honest with you, because this, like, you know when it's unanimous, everybody's pissed. Somebody screwed up. I haven't heard one person with any common sense say it like this is just a travesty, and it's unfortunate because the bad thing about it is when those other guys, rightfully so, are going to be who going to go in the Hall of Fame. That thing is that elephant in the back of the room, like, Belichick should have been here. And it's going to take away from their shine, and I hate that.
Okay. We'll see. That's Barkley on that. Now, as far as the bet, $250,000, which is an unimaginable sum of money for you and certainly for me. There's Mattress Mac. And Mattress Mac, whose name is Jim McInvale, who is a Houston mattress store owner. I guess the store is known as Mattress Mac. And he's known for making these enormous Super Bowl bets. Sometimes it pays off for him, and sometimes it doesn't, like when he bet $9.5 million. I don't know how he did this, but he bet $9.5 million on the Bengals in the Super Bowl in 2022, and the Rams won, of course, and he lost the money. Now, he's made money on other bets. He bet on Tom Brady and the Bucs and won $3.5 million on that. And with the losses, he considers it worth it because he gets a lot of publicity. Here we are in Washington, D.C., talking about a Houston mattress store. The interesting part of this, now he's picking the underdog. He's going with the 4.5-point underdog Patriots on a week from Sunday. And he's placing $2 million. So he could win $4 million. He could win $4 million if the Patriots win. On top of that, to get business into the store, and this is maybe how it becomes, I don't know, something of a wash, depending on how much business he does. But if you spend $4,000 at Mattress Mac and the Patriots win, you get your money back. you got to spend at least $4,000. Now, I can tell you, you got to be buying one of those specialty beds to do that because, again, I bought a queen size mattress and box spring within the last, I don't know, year, and it was like $800. So you'd have to buy a lot of mattress stuff to get yourself to $4,000, but that's probably not a bad idea. So, hey, he's figured out something here, and given that he continues to do it, he's not going broke with it. So to even things out, winning a bet of $3.5 million, pretty good. I don't know how he gets. I guess there are places to do this, to bet $2 million. You can't just walk up to a sports book and put down $2 million. But that's what Mattress Mac is putting down. And Charles Barkley, $250,000. When I do go to Super Bowl parties, and I won't be going to the next two because I will be continuing to work, but if I were to go to a Super Bowl party and I would fill out the squares, that's as much gambling as I would do. And one year, I won $25 doing that. So there's that. All right. Last thing from Barkley is this, and this goes to what happened to him back in 1992, and I've got a little more to add to this. I don't know how they stumbled into this, but it's about being traded. And Barkley started his career with the Philadelphia 76ers, and I believe had he stayed there and won a title, he'd be on the Mount Rushmore of athletes there with like Julius Erving and Mike Schmidt and I don't know. Would you put Nick Foles there just because of what he did? I don't know. But you'd have a Mount Rushmore with Barkley on it had he stayed in Philadelphia. But he wound up going to Phoenix, got to one finals, and lost to Michael Jordan and the Bulls. This is about what happened to him in the summer of 1992, and I will add my own personal anecdote to this.
How did you tell the Sixers you wanted out?
I never got a chance, Dan. What's really funny, I was on trial because I had punched that guy in Milwaukee. So I had spent a week on trial in Milwaukee. I was acquitted. But what was crazy, we spent a week because it should have never went to trial, to be honest with you. So the guys, me and my attorney had wrote a letter to the Sixers that we worked on all week because I didn't want to alienate the fans in Philly. So I got home Friday night from Milwaukee. I got acquitted in the afternoon, flew back to Philly, and I had made up my mind we were going to send a letter Monday morning. What's really funny, I forgot that I had ordered a set of ping golf clubs. They were sitting on my front yard when I got back to Philly that Friday night. And then Sunday morning, I get a call from the Sixers that I got traded to Phoenix. But we were going to send that letter Monday morning.
Requesting a trade?
Yes, because I didn't want to alienate the fans, because the fans of Philly had always treated me great. But I had had enough. I had went through 3 years of getting traded every week.
But did the trial have something? Did that expedite them wanting you out of town?
No, because I was acquitted, Dan.
Oh, I know. Okay. I know that, but I don't know if,
No, the Sixers were just an idiotic organization back then. I mean, we had the number one pick in the draft. I think my career would be totally different if the Sixers, who had the number one pick in the draft, had taken Brad Daugherty, who I loved as a player and had a hell of a career. If I'd have had Brad Daugherty for 10 years, I think my career in Philly would be totally different. But they traded it, the number one pick, to Cleveland for Roy Hampton, who's a good dude. He's a good dude.
But he's not.
And he's not Brad Daugherty.
No, he's not.
And what's really crazy, to be honest with you, they traded Moses in that same trade that nobody ever talked about. They traded Moses to the Bullets for Jeff Rulin, who I never got to play with. So after having the number one pick, I lose Moses, who ended up playing like another 3 or 4 years. So I lost Moses, who was like my dad, who's the most important person in my basketball career. So I went to bed with the number one pick. I woke up with Roy Hampton, who's a good dude, I might add. And then they traded Moses for Jeff Ruland, a guy I never even played with. That's how stupid the Sixers were back then.
Yeah, I mean, you think about what if. He's talking about the 86 draft, which was a really tragic one. That was the Len Bias draft. And Cleveland, this is how big men were valued back in 86. Len Bias, had we not had that horrible tragedy where he died of a cocaine overdose, he might have given Michael Jordan a run for his money in the second half of the 80s. That's how good he was. And they didn't want to take a chance on him for whatever reason, probably because of size. There's such a desire for big men. So the number one pick gets traded by the Sixers to Cleveland. Doherty goes there, has a good, not great career. Roy Hinson, who had chronic knee problems, goes to Philadelphia. And they actually play together for a while because Barkley doesn't leave Philadelphia until 1992. In the meantime, he's right. They did trade Moses Malone to the Bullets, and they traded him for Jeff Ruland. Part of it was age. Ruland was younger. The other thing, they didn't want to pay Moses. Moses was making maybe the most money in the league. It was about $2.5 million a year, which is a laughable sum now, but not then. So they traded him to the Bullets. He was a two-time All-Star here and then went to Atlanta and was an All-Star again. He didn't play 2 or 3 more years. He played 9 more years. Finally finished up playing with the Spurs when he was like 40. But, yeah, they let Moses go. So if they would have kept everybody together, if they would have had Moses and if they would have had Brad Daugherty, and Julius Erving played 2 years with Barkley, how that would have worked out. As it turned out with Ruland, Ruland goes to Philadelphia. It turned out to be a great trade for the Bullets. Over the course of 4 years, he played 18 games in Philadelphia. He missed 4 seasons, came back 91-92, which was Barkley's last year in Philadelphia, played 13 games, was out of the league after the 1993 season. Really, because he was a great player here. He and Rick Mahorn, the Beef Brothers. Man, that was a duo back in the early 80s, but knee problems derailed his career. Thing I would add about a personal anecdote. I'm still not going to reveal who tipped us off, but this was the early days of sports radio here. It was a relatively new thing. It had been around in New York for 5 years, and we started the station here in May of 92. So this trade happened, probably like July or August of 92. And we got a tip from somebody who was at the time working in the NBA. And the NBA sends out wires, or did at that time, wires. There was no internet, but they sent out, what trade was going to happen. So he knew in the morning what this trade was going to be. And he just wanted to see, kind of like dropping an Alka-Seltzer tablet into a glass of water to see it, fizz up. And he just wanted to see this story kind of take off on sports radio, knowing that we had this 24-hour-a-day format where we could just obsess about it. Even though it wasn't local, we had an exclusive. So we went with it. And, man, we got a hold of some of the people who were in the trade, and they didn't even know what was happening yet. I mean, it was really bizarre. And that turned out to be a great trade for Phoenix, not a great trade for Philadelphia. And Barkley came close, but like a lot of guys in the league at that time, he just got Jordaned. The Phoenix Suns in most years would have been good enough to win the NBA championship, as the Houston Rockets were in the year plus that Jordan didn't play. By the time he came back in the 94-95 season, he was not in basketball shape, and they lost to Orlando in the Eastern Conference Finals. But that's at that time, that was how you had to win, because Jordan won 6 of 8. And the 2 years he didn't win, he missed an entire season for baseball and most of another one. So he just weren't getting past Jordan. But he had a great career, Barkley, and that was his best year, 93. They managed to take Chicago to 6 before losing. But had he stayed in Philadelphia, it is a really good what-if story. And what if he is teaming up with Malone and Irving for another couple of years, and they do get Brad Daugherty, with what they had. Andrew Toney had some injury problems along the line too, but that could have been a great team. That really could have been. All right, coming up, speaking of great teams, it was 43 years ago today that the Redskins won their first Super Bowl with the greatest play in the history of the franchise. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
So if you've been listening the last month or so, I have chronicled my son's wonderful journey following Indiana football to the national championship. He did not get to the national championship game, where tickets, even close to game time, were like $4,000. But he went to the Rose Bowl and he went to the Peach Bowl. So he saw him knock off Alabama and Oregon on their way to the championship, and then, of course, was glued to the TV when Indiana won. So I consider that to be part of the journey. Would have been really cool, a real symmetry, if the championship game was held at the Rose Bowl, which is where, I guess, the quarterfinals were held, where Indiana knocked off Alabama, because it would have brought it full circle with me. And I got to see the signature play in person in the history of Washington football, whether they were the Redskins or Washington football team or now the Commanders. It was the John Riggins run. But Indiana now has a play that is, for their program, very much equal to what John Riggins did, and it's a play that we've all seen. I believe they're going to build a statue for Fernando Mendoza outside the stadium with his arms outstretched, reaching over the goal line, and this was the call from Sean McDonough on ESPN Radio.
They're 1 for 1 on 4th down tonight. Mendoza's in the gun. The ball's on the 13-yard line. He's clapping as if they're going to snap it. They do snap it. He takes off running on a design quarterback draw. He has the first down. He spins into the end zone. What a play by Mendoza. And what a call. It was a design run. He bounced off a couple of hits. Looked like he was going to get the first down. He wasn't satisfied. It's another highlight reel play for Mendoza. And a 9-point lead.
Which they needed to hang on and win. So that was the play that cemented the game for them, and that is the iconic play in the history of Indiana football, and will go down, I'm sure, as one of the most iconic plays in the history of college football. I had an experience 43 years earlier, almost exactly 43 years earlier, at the Rose Bowl, the team of my youth. I probably the same allegiance, maybe even more than my son has to Indiana, though he's got a lot of allegiance to Indiana, and he thought it was always going to be basketball. Obviously not. But on this day in 1983, I was working in Dallas, and I actually had done an SMU basketball game the day before, got on a plane, and met up with a friend of mine who had a hotel in Los Angeles, and he used to like to do this. He liked to go to Super Bowls and scalp. Well, this happened to be the perfect storm for us because this was the year of the strike, and 9 games were played, knocked out half the season. They had a tournament, so it was a 16-team tournament. 8 teams in each conference would have playoffs, so you had to win 4 postseason games to win the Super Bowl, 3 to get there. All 3 were at home for Washington. The first-round game against Detroit, the game against Minnesota where John Riggins took a bow after his great performance, and then the classic Cowboys victory in the NFC Championship game where they knocked Danny White out. And so they go to the Super Bowl, but there's only a week in between. And they were expecting Dallas to get there because most of the gear that was sold was blue, not burgundy. And you got the Miami Dolphins who are in, but they're coming from the East Coast, so that's a big schlep. Washington coming from the East Coast in a stadium that seats 100,000 people. And the NFL really hadn't gotten hip to greed at that point. It was only Super Bowl 17. Believe it or not, the face value on the tickets was $40. $40. It's now... I don't think you can get a ticket there for under like $1,500 face. But in those days, Super Bowl face value tickets were $40. You had a 100,000 seat stadium, and it was truly a buyer's market. And there was 2 other people with us. We got 4 seats together in the end zone 2 hours before the game. Face value $40. If we'd waited until a half an hour before the game, we'd have been on the 50-yard line for $10. That's how much of a buyer's market it was. So anyway, get in. And it is a glorious day, beautiful weather, and the Rose Bowl is spectacular. And here's the team that I've loved since I was 8 years old, and had 10 years earlier. The most devastating day of my sports fandom life was when they had lost to the same Dolphins in the Super Bowl. Same coach, Don Shula, different coach for the Redskins, not George Allen, but Joe Gibbs, and it comes down to this. Now, it's amazing when you look at the stats how lopsided they are for Washington because Richie Pettibone had them bottled up defensively, and frankly, it might have been the worst quarterback duo ever to start in a Super Bowl. Don Strock and David Woodley. They split the time. They used to call it Woodstock. and they weren't good. And in the second half, they didn't complete a pass, and they weren't very effective in the first half either. But there were two enormous plays. One of them I could see unfolding because it was happening in front of me as I sat in the end zone. Mark Murphy is signaling, get over, get over, get over. Nobody gets over. Jimmy Cefalo, who later had a pretty good career in television, is wide open and scores on a 76-yard touchdown catch. He should have been covered. The pass never should have been caught. And then with the game tied at 10 just before the half, Fulton Walker takes a kickoff back for a touchdown. So it's 17-10 Miami at the half, and you go, oh, whoa, what's going on here? But then Washington comes back in the second half, though they are still behind. 10 minutes and 10 seconds to go. They're down 17-13. This is a time where it was rare if you went for it on fourth down, even trailing. But they're at the Dolphin 43-yard line. Joe Gibbs calls a timeout, and this play is then called by Joe Theismann, which works to perfection, and to this day, 43 years later, is remembered as the greatest play in franchise history.
Let's go. Goal line. I left tight wing, 70 chip on white. Ready?
Here comes the diesel. Here comes the diesel.
Yellow 41! Yellow 41! Hunt!
There's the snap, hand to Riggins. Good hole. He's got the first down to 40. He's gone. The 35, the 30, the 20. He's gone. He's gone. Touchdown, Washington Redskins. 42-yard touchdown run on fourth and a foot. John Riggins has given the Redskins the lead in Super Bowl 17.
Yes, indeed. And as John will tell you, he's dined out off that for many years. That was 43 years ago today. He was named the MVP. He set the record for most yards rushing, 166. Unfortunately for Washington, that was broken the following year by Marcus Allen in a rout of Washington 38-9 as they tried to repeat. But he also carried the ball 38 times. You will not see a running back carry the ball 38 times anymore. That set a Super Bowl record as well. First player from an NFC team to run for 100 yards. And, you know, you think about the Packers and the Green Bay sweep. They didn't have a 100-yard rusher in either of their two wins. And he also caught a pass for 15 yards, meaning he had more yards from scrimmage, 181, than the entire Dolphin team. Just incredible. And, yeah, you take away the two big plays, basically blown assignments. Fulton Walker, 98-yard touchdown return, and then Jimmy Cefalo, who is, if he goes to Canton, it's going to be on a bus, catching a 76-yard touchdown pass. Other than that, dominant performance by the Redskins and an incredible play, which if you saw it either as I did in person or you saw it on TV, it will never be forgotten. And just a wonderful, wonderful afternoon for me as I got to see the Redskins win their first one. I was actually at the Doug Williams one as well. I was there as media, so I really couldn't cheer that much, and I watched the last one on television. And if they go to another one soon enough for me to go at my age, I'll try to get there. All right, coming up in the next hour, we're going to talk to Earl Lloyd's son. Who's Earl Lloyd? Earl Lloyd is the first African-American to play in the NBA. That and more as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
This is the 75th anniversary of African-American players playing in the NBA for the first time. Now, the league itself was relatively new in 1950, just a year old, and there were 10 teams, yet only 3 black players in the league that year. One of them was Nat Sweetwater Clifton, who was signed by the New York Knicks, and Chuck Cooper, who was signed by Boston, as well as Earl Lloyd. And because of the way the scheduling worked out, Earl Lloyd playing for the Washington Capitals, been 3 iterations of the Capitals. The Caps, of course, the hockey team you know now. There was also the Washington Caps 1 year in the ABA, 1969-70. And there was the Washington Capitals, who played in the NBA briefly because the team folded midway through the 1950-51 season. But on Halloween, Earl Lloyd became the first black player to suit up in the NBA as the Capitals played at Rochester. And years after he retired, he recalled what that night was about.
Halloween.
Now, were you nervous before this game?
No. You know, I took it lightly. I said, well, I said, man, they're not worried about me. They probably think I'm a goblin anyhow. It's Halloween. They done brought this fool out here in this costume. But, I mean, you're an athlete. When you get back down to it, once you make that team, you're a basketball player.
And how did the team respond to you?
If they think you can help, you don't have a problem. And I'm sure there were people on my own team that probably would rather I had been there, but they're smart enough. See, this is where the college thing comes in. They're smart enough, if they say something derogatory, not only are they going to offend me, they're going to offend some of his white teammates.
So as part of recognition of the historic night that Earl Lloyd had in 1950, Halloween of 1950, the NBA is honoring that with the Pioneers Classic, which will take place on Sunday, a matchup between the Bucks and the Celtics. And we're lucky enough to be joined by Kevin Lloyd, who is the son of Earl Lloyd. Before we get started, what is it like for you to hear your dad's voice years after he has passed away talking about what he did in 1950?
Man, it's touching what my father did in 1950. Touching. Excuse me, I'm sorry. It's very touching, man, because it was unheard of course, that to have a black person on a basketball court. And my dad was the one that did that, October 31st, 1950.
Yeah, I mean, there were others that followed, but there will never be a first, and he also accomplished another first in his career.
Let me just say this. My father, Chuck Cooper, and Sweetwater Clifton, they are connected at the hip for sure.
Mm-hmm.
They're the Pioneer three, the first three. But my father was the first. And, records are made to be broken. But when someone's the first, that can never be taken away.
Yep. Yeah. That would be. Go ahead.
When my father achieved on October 31st, 1950, as being the first, that's in stone. That's in stone for eternal.
Yeah, no question about it. And that would be my point, that there will never be another first. And he was in fact the first. And another first occurred later on in his professional career, which we will get to. But this was the landscape of the NBA in 1950. There were 10 teams, and most of them were East Coast based. There was Philadelphia, there was Boston, there was New York, Syracuse, Baltimore, Washington, and the Western Division was Minneapolis, Rochester, Fort Wayne, Indianapolis, and Tri-Cities. And how's this for a trio of cities? Moline, Rock Island, Illinois, and Davenport, Iowa. I don't know how they put those three together, but that was a team.
What year did St. Louis come into the equation?
St. Louis became that's a good point, because the Tri-Cities team moved to Milwaukee first, then to St. Louis, and now they are the Atlanta Hawks. So that's kind of the evolution of the NBA, and getting to the point of your dad. Although there was, and I'm sure it was not easy to go to places like Fort Wayne and Indianapolis in those days.
Terrible. Terrible.
Yeah, and I'll get to that. At least most of the cities he played in, this is not to say he had it easy in any way, but it was not like going mostly to the deep South in those days.
Right.
And so as we look at this, there's some interesting nuggets on this. Red Auerbach had been the coach of the Washington Capitals, but that was before they entered the NBA. They were in something called the Basketball League of America or something like that, and then that merged with the NBA. By the time your dad came along in 1950, Red was coaching the Boston Celtics, and the coach of the team was Bones McKinney. Bones McKinney was a player coach. And this is, I think, a significant part of the struggles that people like your father and Jackie Robinson faced. It's that they had to have some allies, and he was the only black player on that team. As a matter of fact, I looked at his career. He never played with more than two black teammates, mostly one, and he was the only black player on those teams, the early teams that he played on. And there was a story that I read where he was, I believe it was Indianapolis, or maybe it was in Fort Wayne, where he was not allowed to eat in the hotel dining room with his teammates and had to take his meal up to his room. And Bones McKinney, man who grew up in North Carolina, went and made sure that he had dinner with him in his room. Did he ever talk to you about that?
Absolutely. You know, my father was touched by that because during those times, Bones McKinley, he didn't have to do that. And when they checked in the hotel, they told my dad that you can stay here, but you can't leave the game time, which means he couldn't eat with his teammates. And Bones, came to my dad's room and said, "Hey man, you're not gonna eat by yourself today. I'm gonna eat with you." And my father told him he appreciated that, but you don't have to do that. Bones, he insisted, "No, we're gonna have dinner together," and they had dinner together. And my father never forgot that.
Yeah, I mean, it's those kind of acts of kindness, which you'd think nowadays, oh my God, he's banned from the dining room. That's team should have walked out of the hotel. But those were different times, and yeah.
Go ahead. You go ahead.
No, I don't know what you would add to that. I would just say that I'm sure that your dad, as many struggles as he had, you had to have support. And as he said in the audio that we played there, his white teammates looked at him as somebody they needed. They needed him to win games.
That can help the team for sure.
Yeah.
When my father got to the Capitals, they had guys, UCLA, University of Southern California, University of North Carolina. There's a couple other schools. North Carolina State, and those were heavy hitter schools, heavy hitters. And my father got to camp. He said that after the third day, he knew he belonged.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They used to play. Go ahead.
I was going to say that your dad, who's local, actually grew up in Alexandria and went to what became T.C. Williams, and I think is now Alexandria City High School or something like that.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah, he went to West Virginia State, not West Virginia, West Virginia State, and at that time, I would think, Kevin, that he had to be outstanding to be recognized. Scouting then was not what it is now, and to be a draft pick in a 10-team NBA league, he must have been a spectacular player at that school.
Well, he was good. He was a two-time All-American, and I guess one of the scouts, my father played in a conference called the CIAA. Excuse me. In I guess the late 50s. They played the CIAA tournament called Uline Arena in Washington, and I think somebody saw my father from the Washington Capitals saw my father play, and it's like we need to take a chance on him. And I guess the owner said, let's just see how it goes, on draft night. And when Boston took Chuck Cooper and the Knicks took Sweetwater Clifton, my father didn't get drafted to the ninth round. It was either the 99th person or 100th person in the ninth round.
Mm-hmm.
So they must have threw a dart. They must have threw a dart at the board and landed on my dad.
That arena that became the Washington Coliseum, where the Beatles played their first concert in the United States, and I saw the ice capades there and the circus and all that. But you know what it is? It's an REI sporting goods store now. Right near Union Station.
So that land is I was there last week in D.C. I was in Alexandria, Virginia for the Earl Lloyd basketball clinic.
Mm-hmm.
And I went by, where the arena was, and it's like a 3-story, 4-story parking lot. And they had this big giant mural of my dad up there. I was surprised to see it.
Yeah.
Yes, it's just touching, man.
That's tremendous.
What's going on with my dad right now?
We're talking to Kevin.
We got
Talking to Kevin Lloyd, who is the son of Earl Lloyd, who is part of a great honor that is going to take place this Sunday when they have the NBA Pioneers Classic with the Bucks playing the Celtics to honor his dad, Earl Lloyd, breaking the color line in the NBA. Something that I've heard over the years, I'm sure you've heard this as well, that there were quotas in the NBA at that time. And what they used to say is, I mean, it's a horrible thing to think about, but the word was you played 1 when you're ahead and 2 when you're behind. And
right.
And so, I mean, to have been considered good enough to be one of the few black players who were actually, allowed, and I put that in air quotes, allowed to play in the NBA. I mean, think about what an exclusive fraternity that would be.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Ahead. So you go ahead.
Okay, I was just going to move on to his career after basketball. Now, the Washington Capitals folded in the 1951 season, and he had only played 7 games. Earl Lloyd gets drafted into the Army, comes back to the NBA and has a good long career, plays with the Syracuse Nationals, who became the Philadelphia 76ers after the Philadelphia Warriors moved to San Francisco to become the San Francisco Warriors. A lot of movement in the NBA in those days. They wins the national championship, NBA championship with Syracuse. Last couple of years plays with the Detroit Pistons, which leads Earl Lloyd into, I think, as something as significant as becoming the first black player, maybe even more so. He became the first black coach in basketball in the NBA to not be a player coach. Now, to take nothing away from Bill Russell, when Red Auerbach retired as a coach, Bill Russell said, well, you're the only coach I ever played for. I don't want to play for anybody else. And Red said, why don't you coach yourself? And so Russell coached the Celtics, won a couple of championships as a player coach. Your dad was exclusively a coach at a time, and we still face this now, that where we talk about black athletes as being great athletes, have great athleticism, and white athletes as being cerebral. He became a coach based on his smarts, his knowledge of the game. What do you?
Correct.
What did he tell you about what that meant to him at that time in 1971?
Well, let me just say this too. Let me just back up a little. They wouldn't pass out keys, to black coaches like that. You say Bill Russell was he was the first black player coach.
Mm-hmm.
But before that, my father opened up a lot of doors. So he was also in 1969, 68, I'm not sure what year, he became the first black assistant coach in the NBA also.
Wow.
And these are records are documented. You can Google this.
Oh, I believe it.
So he was the first.
Yeah.
He was the first black. This is for our listeners, but he was the first black assistant coach in the NBA. Then he became the first black bench coach in the NBA. And I thought it would just touch me because the teams. We in 2025, and teams just don't give out keys to a team, and they gave it to my father. They gave him a chance.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that some good play, Bob Lanier and Dave Bean got hurt, and Dave was out for a period of time. Then Bob Lanier was out for a period of time with a bum knee, and they weren't winning.
Yeah.
And in any sport that you have, when you're not winning, you know what happens. They show you the door.
Yeah. Yeah. He never.
But I just appreciate the Pistons, of giving my dad that chance.
Yeah, it was a brief chance. Unfortunately, he got fired 7 games into the following season and never got another chance. Did he want to pursue another coaching opportunity, or was he ready to move on to something else after that?
I think deep down that was his passion. He would have liked to coach another team. It just didn't happen.
Yeah, yeah. And I know he got into education and many other things. And what an exemplary life that he led, and expressed. He said, "Look, whether it's true or not true, that he didn't feel like he was a trailblazer like Jackie Robinson, but he was." And when you think about this, that when he became the first bench coach, as you say, first African American bench coach, first assistant, wasn't until 1975 that we had Frank Robinson as the manager of the Indians, and he was a player manager at that point. Mm-hmm. And the first black coach in the NFL was not until 1989 with Art Shell. So to think that he did that almost 20 years before, it seems insane now, but right, Kevin, that had to be, mind-blowing at the time.
Once again, he opened a lot of doors for a lot of black coaches today in 2025. You look down the NBA teams, and I think you may have had 12 or 13 black coaches coaching NBA teams.
Mm-hmm.
And when my dad was there as an assistant coach, it was unheard of. He was the only one.
Yeah.
And then when my dad was coaching in '71, he was the only one.
Mm. Well,
so it just he feels kind of way that he opened the doors for a lot of black coaches.
No question.
For sure.
And the Pioneers Classic will be on Sunday between the Bucks and the Celtics, and you will be back in town on February 3rd when the Wizards take on the Knicks, and they plan down to your dad then, right?
Absolutely.
Well, look, it's great talking to you. Very much admire what your dad did, and people should understand that in a league that has mostly African American players these days, that there was a time when the league didn't want them, and it's just hard to get your head around it. But we've come a long way in the past 75 years.
And that's playing and coaching. They didn't want them.
Yeah,
playing and coaching. They didn't want them.
No question. All right. Well, good luck with that, and thanks for coming on today. I've really enjoyed talking to you.
Napoleon, I thank you from the bottom of my heart. Our family thanks you, man, and I'm looking forward to seeing you on Tuesday.
Well, you got a ticket for me?
Oh man, you make a phone call. You Mr. Poland.
No, I'm Mr. Poland's cousin.
Okay.
Good speaking with you, and thanks very much for the time.
Thank you very much. You have a great day.
You too. That's Kevin Lloyd. That's Earl Lloyd's son, and we talk about pioneers. That's someone who's been somewhat forgotten because I think because of the way his career played out, in that he had the initial 7 games. And Chuck Cooper goes to the Celtics, becomes a regular in the lineup. His career is not interrupted by military service. And I know from the time I spent in New York, and that goes back 40 years, but still it's a long time after Sweetwater Clifton played for the Knicks. He was still a household name that people talked about what Sweetwater Clifton did in his days with the New York Knicks. So, again, if you're interested in being a part of this, is going to be February 3rd when the Wizards take on the Knicks, as they will honor Earl Lloyd for that, and then this weekend with the Bucks playing the Celtics. All right, we'll come back and wrap things up. It's the Andy Poland Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Poland Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Graham is coming up at 11 o'clock. If you're just jumping in your car, we talked to Kevin Lloyd, who is the son of Earl Lloyd, the first African-American to play in the NBA, and he's being honored this weekend with a game between the Bucks and the Celtics, and they will honor him as well as part of Black History Month next week when the Wizards take on the Knicks. And just noting that Super Bowl is going to be called by Mike Tirico. And I don't think he's the first African-American or first man of color to do it. I believe Greg Gumbel did at least one during his time. But Mike is the best in the business. And on top of that, the pre- and post-game activities, the host, and I assume, I haven't looked into this, but I assume she's going to present the trophy, and that's Maria Taylor. Maybe the first woman, period, to be the main host of the Super Bowl, and I'm sure the first African-American woman. So some things are changing in that regard. And Mike, as I understand it, I think I read this, that after the Super Bowl, he is hopping on a plane and going to Los Angeles. It's in the Bay Area this year, Santa Clara. So it's a short flight, but he's hopping on a flight to get to a studio to do Olympic coverage for NBC. He's unbelievable. And I got to know him a little bit, worked with him a little bit at ESPN. And then he's one of these guys, and the best of the best are like this. They can take on a million tasks and never let you know they're sweating if they are sweating. He's always uber prepared for everything. And with a schedule like that, if you were to ask him about it, yeah, okay, we got time, get on a plane, go there and get to the studio. And no one seems more at home in a studio than Tirico. He's at the Bob Costas level as far as I'm concerned, and pretty much has replaced Bob Costas at NBC, though Costas is coming back to be the studio host for baseball. Not this season, but the season before, he gave up doing play-by-play for baseball. He said he just reached a point where he couldn't reach the level that he thought was his standard, and he wanted to step aside. But in his 70s, he's coming back to the studio, and that was not a great breakup between NBC and Costas, because Costas had done a seminar at the University of Maryland about concussions, and he said, football scrambles brains. And the bread and butter of NBC Sports is Sunday Night Football. And that didn't go over well, and that led to a 40-year relationship that broke up. And, Costas has not said anything really negative about them. And I guess the whole thing kind of thawed out when he appeared on the Olympics with Al Michaels this last time around. But find that to be, important as we head into Black History Month, that, Mike Tirico and Maria Taylor, at one time that would have been an enormous deal. It obviously is not now, and that is a good thing. And there's nobody doing play-by-play who's better than Mike Tirico. So looking forward to that, and looking forward to next week as we do the annual countdown to the Super Bowl, the most overhyped event in history. I haven't done Radio Row in a long time, but I did enough of them over the years to know what that's all about. So I want to thank Kevin Lloyd for coming on today. Also, Isaac Kuhn-Harris for running the show. Thanks to all of you who listen. Bram is coming up next, and I'll see you back here Monday morning at 9 a.m.